First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Welcome back to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler, live here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom and streaming on our website and our apps. So if you are watching us after the fact, just to let you know, we're there on the Fox 12 apps for your phone or on your television. So if you have a Fire TV, Roku, or Apple TV, make sure you go through into your store and download that Fox 12 Oregon app, and make sure you update the mobile app. There's an update for that as well. All right, now that that's here, let's talk about what our topic is here. So you can see on your screen, white nose syndrome and bats. White nose syndrome is a fungus that is affecting bats. It was big on the East Coast and was, as we'll learn in this interview, very devastating there. It's been in the state of Washington for a while, and now it has been found in Oregon. So what does this mean for the bat population of Oregon? We wanted to find out more and get an extensive, in-depth interview about bats and what they mean to the state and environmentally and ecologically, but also talking about how this fungus is affecting them and what people can do to maybe help prevent the spread of that. So we spoke to Emily Buck from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, who was our expert on this. She'll get into it a lot more. Let's listen to her right now. All right. Well, thank you, very much for having time to talk to us about this and educate people about what's going on here. We want to get into everything that's happening with the bats, but before we do that, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and your role with ODFW?
Happy to. Thank you. My name is Emily Armstrong Buck, and I am a wildlife health biologist. So I work in our state wildlife health lab in Corvallis, and we take in all kinds of stuff. We do a lot of investigations. Sometimes things die. We want to figure out why. Sometimes we're tracking an outbreak, or sometimes we have a new outbreak, like we're going to be talking about today. So I assist with a lot of that. I also assist, with organizing samples, necropsies, live animal captures. But a big part of my job now is white nose surveillance coordination, which we'll get into next, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, wow, that's got to be an interesting day every day, I'm sure.
I get a lot of variety.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
Yeah.
But, such important work that you're doing there for all of those things. And I guess, to talk about the specific one that we're going into, bats in Oregon, would you mind, for people who may not have a very good idea, I mean, they're aware of bats clearly, but to get a little bit of an overview of just what kind of bats we have and what the important things are that people should know about bats in Oregon.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have 15 species of bat in Oregon, which surprises a lot of people. They're all insectivorous bats. They all eat insects, and they inhabit pretty much every habitat in Oregon. We've got bats down in the southeast, around Steens Mountain area. There are bats that love to live in canyons and on rock cliffs. We've got our higher elevation forest bats. We've got more generalist bats that will kind of go anywhere that there are bugs. So pretty much any environment in Oregon, you're going to find bats, including the big cities. A lot of them have learned to love roosting in our buildings.
Is there any concern about people and bat interaction?
Yeah, so one concern we always have is rabies exposure, which is pretty rare. You do have to be bitten or scratched. And bats can also just leave droppings in homes and be kind of gross. People are afraid that they're going to go into your hair. They are not attracted to your hair. They don't want to be there either. So there are people do have a lot of concerns about having bats around them. Bats are generally not a risk, but of course with small children, we don't want bats around. So there are different ways you can exclude bats from your house and people you can call to help with that. And those, I think, are normally the kinds of bat conflict we encounter. Okay.
And let's talk about, you mentioned there's 15, I think, different species of bat in Oregon. Let's talk about white nose syndrome, I guess, to start off before we even go to that. Can you tell us what white nose syndrome is?
Yeah, white nose syndrome is a disease of bats that's caused by a fungal infection. So they get infected with a fungus that we call PD for short because its scientific name is Pseudogymnoascus destructans, which is hard to remember and harder to say. So we stick with PD. And this fungus causes a lot of damage to their skin and their wing membranes when they're trying to hibernate. That essentially causes starvation over the winter, or they just get too weak by the end of the winter and they can't really recover their strength.
And where is this syndrome normally found, like as of right now?
Yeah, normally it is an invasive fungus. So it was introduced to the U.S., we think, from Europe around 2006. And it's been kind of making its way across the country since then. It's been in Washington since 2016, and of course just now is in Oregon. We have been tracking nationally the spread across the U.S., and there is a national team that kind of monitors this because it can be such a threat to our bats and has had pretty devastating impacts on the East Coast to some of their bat populations.
So this is contagious the right word? I'm not sure what you call
That's
it.
a good word. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You could still call it contagious. Yeah, it is contagious between the bats. I should say the fungus is not a danger to people or domestic animals or pets. It really only lives in the cold. It really only thrives in the cold, dark places that bats like to hibernate.
And how big of a concern is this for the bat populations in Oregon? As you mentioned, it's in Washington. I guess, how big of a concern is this for the bats in Oregon?
It is a big concern. Like I mentioned, this disease killed millions and millions of bats on the East Coast, quite devastating when it first hit. But we do have some advantages on our side of the court. We do know a lot more than they did when it first arrived, and we have more tools that we can use. So we'll be looking into some of those tools, including prebiotics on the wings. There are some other treatments that you can work on with bats that we are taking a close look at to try to protect them. So if it did really get thoroughly into our bat populations, it could have a significant impact on their population level. But I would like to also say, don't panic.
Okay.
I think that there are some differences in ecology between our bats and the eastern bats that will hopefully work in our advantage. We've been learning a lot since it got to Washington, and we're keeping a very close eye and trying to get really creative with how we can best support our bats so that they can survive this.
Does it affect all bat species?
It does not. We have found the fungus on a lot of different bat species, and I think most of the species in Oregon have had the fungus found on them, but they didn't actually get sick. So they didn't spend enough time with the fungus in a place where it could really thrive and take hold. So our hibernators that like to hibernate in those cold, dark places and caves and mines and stuff like that, those are going to be the ones that are more impacted.
And you mentioned some of the ways that you're looking to combat this. So, what are the ways to combat this fungus for these bats?
One of the ways is to try to not spread it more. So the bats will spread it themselves because they'll roost with each other in different roosts, and different species will roost together. Bats are a lot more cuddly than you might imagine. A lot of the species are quite cuddly. But so it does depend on kind of what you do as a bat determines whether or not you're likely to actually get sick.
Okay. How is there anything that you can do to try to, is there a cure or anything like that out there?
Yeah, unfortunately, there is not a cure. But what I was leading myself into earlier and then lost myself was that if you are a person who likes to recreate in places where a lot of bats like to go, caves or mines, you can help the bats by cleaning off your gear before you leave, and because you could potentially transmit the spores as well. So I've been telling folks you can check out whitenosesyndrome.org, all the way spelled out, and they have a resource section with some really good decontamination information, because the unfortunate thing about fungal spores is that they are often pretty persistent and hard to kill. So we have some special ways that we go about that. So folks can help to not spread the fungus, and we'll be trying to not move bats around. So we try to limit our participation in the movement of the fungus, and then if we find some sites that are definitely hot with it, like we can try to use some of the things that are in development right now. Specifically, the one I was referring to was the prebiotics on the wings is pretty cool. They essentially cultured a bunch of bacteria from bat wings and figured out which ones would outcompete the bad fungus, and then they made a cocktail. And we are in experiments right now and kind of watching to see the impact that has, and we're hopeful that it will at least give them an advantage over the fungus.
Interesting. For people at home, you meant, just to reiterate this too, what are some key things that people at home can do, or just to make sure that they're not accidentally spreading the fungus themselves?
Most folks are not going to be at risk of spreading this fungus. You'd really have to be someone who goes to a place where there are a lot of bats or someone who works with bats. So if you're not one of those people, I would say generally supporting habitat connectivity and supporting habitat conservation is going to be really helpful for these bats because they need that space as well. And the conservation we do for other species on the ground can also help our bats. So supporting those efforts are helpful. And if you want to do some planting for pollinators in your backyard, some native pollinators, perhaps some native nighttime pollinators, that can provide some good forage for the bats, as long as you don't have a lot of outdoor cats out there, because they do kill quite a few bats.
Anything else that you think is important for people to know?
Bats are really quite incredible little creatures. And if you are not familiar, I would recommend taking a closer look and maybe keeping an eye on our social media going forward, because we'll hopefully have some more stuff coming out that we're working on. And I think that's it. I think maybe learn a little more about the bats in your area. Check out our website. Check out our State Wildlife Action Plan website, which is new and has a lot of information on our bats. And feel free to reach out to us if you have questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I've learned a lot about this just in this interview, but
Thank you.
some great places to go there to find out more. So thanks, Emily.
Thank you very much, Greg. Pleasure to be here.
All right, yeah, seriously, big thank you to Emily for joining, and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, always willing to jump on here and walk through some of these important things to know about our environment, and in this case, bats. So with this white nose syndrome, hopefully we'll be able to get a handle on that and protect that population. We are live streaming here at the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, but we are on our apps. So if you are on the mobile app, I want to recommend that. I mean, this could apply really whenever you're watching, but especially right now, if you're watching live or in the next few days, you want to update that app. There's an important update on there that will help make your experience that much better, where you watch us live or follow along with the biggest stories, get those notifications. You can also do that on our apps for your television streaming services. So that could be Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV. If you've got any of those, download that Fox 12 Oregon app on there, because you can watch us live and after the fact. You can go through and watch newscasts afterward, or all Fox 12 Now segments, or a whole lot more on there. But for now, we're going to go ahead and switch gears on our content. Our 4 p.m. news is coming up in about 20 minutes or so. And if there's breaking news between now and then, I'll be back. But unless that happens, I'll talk to you on Monday. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.